How would 174 pounds have shaken out as the 2020 NCAA Wrestling Championships had they happened? I'm going to tell you where Mark Hall, Mikey Kemerer, Mikey Labriola, JoJo Smith, and the rest of the field could have ended up had they actually wrestled. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Ncaa, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling. And in this series, we've been diving weight by weight, looking at every single bracket and seeing where the guys would have fallen and seeing who would have All-American. So if you want to check out that full playlist, I will have that linked, and you can check that out starting wherever you want to, from 125 all the way up to now we're at 174 pounds, one weight per day. Now, starting off at the quarterfinals and the blood round, that is the best round to start just because it's just allows the flow to go on a little bit easier. Now, starting off the top with a guy like Mark Hall and Anthony Valencia. Mark Hall, of course, the #1 ranked wrestler in the country at 174 after defeating Michael Kemerer, getting that revenge at the Big Ten Wrestling Championships. And that's really what we're going off of a lot of, is the conference championships as well as previous matchups and some head-to-heads. Now, as far as a Hall versus Valencia matchup, we've seen things like this before. These two have actually wrestled in the past before, wrestled this year when Mark Hall won that. The funny thing is, you see Valencia versus Hall. That's the classic matchup at 174 the last few years. Back and forth. But this year, the other brother in Anthony Valencia. But I think Mark Hall ultimately gets the win here, just like he has in the past, and moves on. Valencia now going to move down here to face off against Neil Richards. Moving on to JoJo Smith versus Dylan Leidy. Now, you may be wondering where Smith, the number 12 seed, is in the quarterfinals, because typically you see number 1 through number 8. Not always. You rarely actually see that because of upsets, because of things that happen. But how did Smith get here? Now, Smith is a guy who in the past has had some exciting national championships. I mean, last year coming in as, I believe, as the number 33 seed and facing Alex Marinelli in the first round, almost knocking him off. That was absolutely absurd. But ultimately, Marinelli did get the better of him. But JoJo Smith is a guy who's able to pick off those potential upsets. Up to this point, he beat Bryce Steyert, who he did lose to in the past, but just he kept closing that gap. And I think that because he's been gaining speed, he makes it to the quarterfinals, going up against Leidy. Now, as far as these two, like I said, Smith has just been gaining speed, whereas Leidy, with a close win over Steyert, 3-2, I think, saying that Smith beat Steyert in the round before, that hypothetical win, gives him a little bit of the edge, and he's going to continue to gain speed and move on against Mark Hall in the semifinals. Leidy's now going to move down to face off against Labriola. Now, as far as Jordan Cutler versus Caleb Romero, what would happen there? The number 3 versus number 6 seed. And listen, the only loss that Cutler has on the year this year is to Mark Hall. And, of course, that's the number 1 seed, and Hall's only loss is to Kemerer and vice versa. But as far as Cutler going up against Romero has a couple more losses. And coming in, of course he's a tough wrestler from Ohio State. However, I think Cutler has just had a phenomenal season up to this point, and that's why I have to move Cutler on into the semis, and Romero is going to move down here now to face off against the wrestler from Oklahoma. And the last quarterfinals matchup before we move on to the blood round is Devin Skatska of Minnesota going up against Michael Kemerer, the number 2 seed of Iowa. And this is another match where I don't think it's going to be anything crazy different that you're going to see out of the ordinary. Michael Kemerer has just been impressing all year and just getting better and better and better. And he's going to be able to defeat Skatska again, another Big Ten opponent. And that's why Kemerer is moving on into the semifinals. Skatska now moving down here to the blood round. Interestingly enough, at this weight, I believe this is one of the only weights that we've done so far where all 12 seeds have made it to this round. You see this round happen at the same time at NCAA's with the quarterfinals and the blood round. And this is the only weight, I believe, where I have number 1 through number 12. So no absolutely wild upsets. But as far as the blood round goes, Labriola against Leidy. Labriola in the past has All-American. He has placed 6th. That is his highest placing. Leidy, 2-time round of 12. Last win over Labriola was actually 5-3, and that was at Big Tens. And I think that because of that recency, because of that recent win, Leidy is going to move on. He's made the round of 12 previously 2 times, and no more. He's getting that All-American. Richards versus Valencia. Neil Richards out of VMI. If you haven't watched him this year, he's had an impressive season, an exciting season. Somebody who's just not all that technical, I wouldn't say, but is somebody who's just able to kind of stronghold his guy on his opponents. And because of that, he's made it all the way up to this point, and that's why he is the number 11 seed out of VMI. But going up against a guy like Valencia, who is a little bit more technical, I don't think he's going to be able to stronghold him. And because of that, Valencia is moving on to place. Start and Skatska. Start of Northern Iowa, UNI, going up against Skatska. Skatska, the number 7 seed of Minnesota. Both of these guys have wrestled Valencia in the past, but and talk about Anthony Valencia, both of them have similar matches with him. But as far as losses, as far as wins and losses, Skatska just has a couple of more losses on his record, and going up against Steyr, who's just been moving forward all season. I think that Steyr, maybe it's a shame that he's not in the championship bracket right here, because I think he could have made a good run for it. But because of that, he's a guy who I would be afraid to run into in the consolation bracket, which is exactly what happened to Skatska. And Mantonona of Oklahoma going up against Romero of Ohio State now. Looking at these two, both of them are sophomores. I think this is really a toss-up match. This can go either way. As far as what's going to happen here, the Oklahoma guy has a 21-7 record coming into NCAA's, whereas Romero has a 19-7 record coming in. I think his schedule maybe is a bit tougher. He's wrestled some stronger guys, and because of that, it makes him a little bit tougher of an opponent, and that's why I'm moving Romero on to the next round. Going Romero versus Steyr, this is a match now. I think Steyr's just the better wrestler. I think their matchup wouldn't be that great. I don't think it'd be like a pin or anything like that, but I do think that Steyr's going to move on to the next round, whereas Romero is going to move on now to face off against whoever loses in the other half. And the other thing with Romero is I think he has been picking up some speed into this point, because Ohio State's been doing so strong into the tournament up until this point, if you've been following along with this series. And I think momentum and team momentum has a lot to do with how you do as individually as a wrestler. Now, as far as Valencia versus Leidy, with these two, Leidy, like I said, his only losses on the year to Kemerer and to Mark Hall. He's had an impressive season, somebody who stood out to me this season, and I think that he'd be able to stack up against Anthony Valencia very nicely and defeat him. And that's why Valencia now going for 7th and 8th, which isn't absolutely crazy considering he's the 8th seeded wrestler and Romero is actually the 6th seeded wrestler. So looking now at the semifinals, what is going to happen here? Looking at Mark Hall versus JoJo Smith. This is a match they have wrestled in the past. Mark Hall won that. He won 5-1. And Mark Hall has been in the national championships every single year that he's wrestled, coming into his senior year now. I don't think that changes. I think he finds a way to win at the national tournament because that's what they do. That's what these Penn State wrestlers do, and that's why Mark Hall moved on to the finals, whereas Smith comes and drops down here now to face off against UNI Steyr. Cutler versus Kemerer. This is an interesting matchup. Cutler's 21-1 coming into this season. In the past, he's wrestled Mark Hall 4 times. And with all of those matches, he's actually lost all 4 of them. And I think that that's a similar matchup that we have to look at, a similar common opponent in Mark Hall, considering that he is the number 1 seed, and Mike Kemerer has beat Hall this season. And the first time that he beat him was in the dual meet. He beat him very soundly, took him down multiple times. And because of that, Kemerer is going to move on now to the finals to face off against Mark Hall. Maybe that surprised you, maybe it doesn't surprise you, but please leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. And that's nothing against Cutler. I think he's had an impressive season, an exciting guy out of Lehigh, the number 3 seed, and now he's going to potentially go for 3rd place. Is he going to get it though? I think so, because he has 2 wins against Leidy, Cutler versus Leidy here. He has 2 wins against Leidy in the past. Although they are from the 2018 season, they are still victories to think about. And he's also had the better season. Like I said, his only loss is to Mark Hall, and he's crushed a lot of the other guys in the weight. And that's why Cutler is moving on to 3rd and 4th place. Leidy moving down here now. As far as JoJo Smith going up against Steyer, what would happen there? I think at this point, you see Steyer making this run. He's just winning and winning from that earlier loss that he had in the bracket. He's just pushing ahead. It is a rematch from earlier in the bracket, like I said. And although Smith got the victory in the championship round, I think that Steyer comes ahead here, and which would be an exciting rematch to have seen. Now, let's talk about the placings. 7th and 8th place match, Valencia versus Romero. Romero has a victory over Valencia this season, a 7-3 win in January. I think the same exact thing happens here. Romero gets 6th place, helping Ohio State in the team race. JoJo Smith versus Dylan Leidy. Another rematch from this tournament. Looking here at Smith versus Leidy. I think the opposite happens that did earlier, just like in that last match that he had. And Smith ends up essentially doing the semi-slide into 6th place. Leidy finishes with 1st place. But considering Smith's the number 12 seed, it's an impressive victory for him, an impressive finish. 3rd and 4th place, Cutler versus Steyer. These two, similar records. Cutler, like I said, only loss. I keep repeating it, keep saying it. Steyer now has 2 losses to Leidy in the past, and as well as to Colbray. And because of that, because he has a couple of those extra losses, I have to say Cutler is the guy who deserves, not deserves, but is the guy who probably would get 3rd. Deserves is a whole other topic. Who deserves to place at Nationals? Who doesn't deserve? I think everybody. Anyways, Hall versus Kemerer. Looking at these two, this is not an easy decision. This is not an easy match. This is going to be an insane match, and I tossed back forth, who I think can win. Because I'm a fan of both of these wrestlers, both of these guys. I think they're both class acts and both superb in their weight classes. Now, as far as the last few times these guys wrestled in the duel, like I said already, Kemerer won pretty handily by an 11-6 victory in the duel. Going on to the Big Ten championships, Mark Hall was able to pull off that win 8-5. He was kind of giving up, I don't want to say giving up, but kind of trailing a bit in the 3rd period when Mark Hall started making a little bit of a comeback. Maybe, I don't know if he was tired, if Mark Hall was getting tired because Kemerer was pushing the pace, or what was going on there, maybe hurting a bit, but Mark Hall has found a way to get it done. He's lost to Zahid Valencia the last couple of years in the finals, whereas Kemerer has not been to the finals. And in bumping up to this weight, it's something new for him. Mark Hall now, he wants to get that NCAA championship again in his final season. He just showed. I think the other thing is in the dual meet. Going back a bit, in the dual meet, Mark Hall, looking at the momentum of that match, he was going out there to get that pin, and try to score some bonus points for his team. In Big Tens, he was a little bit more reserved. He was able to win the match how he wanted to, and I think that the same would be here. I think this would be a close match, a very close match, maybe 6-4, 6-5, something along that regard. But I think at the end of the day, Mark Hall ends up with the victory, and as your 174-pound NCAA champion. Please let me know what you think, and if you're interested in checking out the other videos in this series, looking at every single weight class, who would have won 125, who would have won 133, make sure you check out these videos right here, and the next video is coming out tomorrow.